stream celebrating South Asian Heritage Month. Again, I'm really pleased to be hosting this panel where we'll be looking at celebrating women in South Asian communities and also the importance of allyship within that conversation. So just as a reminder, if you've not heard of it before, South Asian Heritage Month runs from the 18th of July to the 17th of August, and it seeks to raise the profile of British, South Asian heritage and history in the UK, with the goal of helping people to better understand the diversity of the present day Britain. So South Asian influences can be found everywhere, from our food to clothes and also in pharmacy. We are quite a diverse group in pharmacy, and we have the stereotype of maybe the Asian man being the chemist owner, shop owner that we sometimes see, which is also really significant in today's conversation about looking at women in pharmacy. So the dates themselves are significant. So 18th of July is the date that the Indian Independence Act in 1947 gained royal assent, and then 17th of August is the date that the borders for India, Pakistan and Bangladesh were identified. So I'd like to introduce our amazing panel today. So we're joined by Sapana Mody, who's a senior healthcare lawyer at Boots. We've got Komal George, who's a career coach and the co-founder of the Black, Asian and Ethnic Minority Women's Pharmacy Network, and Sachin Patel, who's a senior commercial manager at Boots as well. So last week's conversation got a lot of, we got a lot of interest, and it really resonated with the profession. And I think the statistics of how pharmacy is made up is really important. So in terms of pharmacists, 62% of us are women, and we already know that 30% are from an Asian and Asian British background. So there are a lot of Asian women in pharmacy. Pharmacy technicians, I was really surprised, but 88% are women, and 13% are Asian and or Asian British. So again, there are a big number of us in pharmacy. So the aim of today's panel is to use the opportunity to highlight and showcase the contributions of South Asian female pharmacy leaders doing different roles, sharing and celebrating experiences, successes and challenges. And how do we also make sure that we're ensuring that that visibility and representation continues and broadens as we go in different levels of pharmacy? And also, how do we make sure that the allyship piece is there? We need the support of men in the space as well to make sure that we're championing each other and giving each other a voice. So it will be great to hear our panel's roles and reflections on this piece as well. So I'll start with asking each of the panel members a little bit about yourselves and your backgrounds and the roles that you've taken and how you've ended up doing the role that you're doing. So Sapana, I'll start with you.
Thanks, Saman, for inviting me to be part of this panel. It's great to celebrate the successes of Asian female leaders in our profession. So in terms of my background, I took a fairly typical route into community pharmacy. It was at Boots. I did a couple of summer placements, then my pre-reg year, and quite quickly moved into management roles. And a few years later, I had quite a serendipitous moment, actually. I was having dinner with a school friend. We were in our early to mid-20s. She was in the final stages of her foundation training as a doctor. And she happened to comment that she thought I'd be a good lawyer. And what was surprising about that was that I had never expressed my interest in law to her. Perhaps she just thought I was the argumentative type. But actually, the writing had been on the wall, even as an undergraduate for me. I got my top grades in my pharmacy law module, and I have to confess I got slightly less impressive grades in my organic chemistry module. And actually, that conversation changed the course of my career. I was at a stage where the routes available to me were either more senior management or more clinical specialism. And at the time, neither really appealed in quite the right way for me. So I took the plunge. I went down to 1 day a week working as a pharmacist, and I studied for my law degree full time. Lots of people have commented that felt like seemed like a risky thing to do, but it didn't feel too risky at the time. I knew I could always go back to pharmacy if for whatever reason it didn't work out for me, and I'd heard lots about the challenges of getting into the legal profession. But I managed to do it. I completed my law degree. I did 2 years of on-the-job legal training, and I did that with a firm that specialised in healthcare law, and then I qualified as a solicitor. I found that process a challenge because while I was perfectly able to manage the academic requirements, I didn't know much about the legal profession or have any contacts that I could seek advice and guidance from. And at the time I joined, although there was a fairly even split between male and female solicitors, only around 10% of the legal profession were Asian. So I worked at a law firm for a few years, and actually that was really fundamental to consolidating my ability as a lawyer and gaining confidence. And now I'm back in pharmacy, back to my roots. So I'm back at Boots working in the legal team. And I feel really fortunate to have a role where I can combine my passion for pharmacy and my interest in law every single day.
Brilliant, thank you. It's amazing, isn't it, how just one conversation can change everything. And it must have been really interesting going from an environment where we are predominantly like a South Asian background in pharmacy to going into solicitors where it's not so much. Was that weird?
Yeah, it was a challenge. I think you have to have confidence in your own ability. And I know that, as given this conversation is very much about leadership, that was something I really reflected on actually when preparing for today, which was I've now got to a stage in my career where you develop the confidence in your own knowledge and ability, but it was really tough. And I feel extremely fortunate to have had the support of the people around me to encourage me to stretch myself and push myself into something different. But I had a very, very good safety net behind me.
Great, thank you. Komal?
Hi, Aman. Thank you so much for inviting me to this today. I'm really, really excited to hear from everyone that's on here as well, you know. So just my background, I started off as a hospital pharmacist way back when. And actually only became a hospital pharmacist because I didn't get any community pharmacy placements. I literally only got a place in hospital, and I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to be a hospital pharmacist for a while. So I ended up working in hospital for a while, and but always had this sense that I wanted to do something for pharmacy rather than in pharmacy. And that kind of drove me to do lots of different things. And I ended up working in community pharmacy for a while, and have spent most of my career in community pharmacy now. So I took the plunge and moved out of hospital. And I remember at the time my colleagues saying to me, "You're going to the other side," you know, and me thinking, yeah, but we're all the same profession. I don't quite understand this, but hey, let's give it a go. So I went into community pharmacy, did some locums and stuff, and ended up eventually really kind of being drawn by doing something for pharmacy. And I ended up working at the NPA. So spent several years at the NPA in their information team, absolutely loved that job, loved my career, my colleagues there, really, really felt like I was making a difference to community pharmacists every day through the work that we were doing there. And then got the bug and wanted to do something more, and ended up becoming head of information at the PSNC, at the Negotiator. So ended up spending most of my career, really. I spent 8 years at PSNC in various different roles, ended up being head of dispensing and supply there, and really seeing pharmacy from a very, very different angle. But I guess having children makes a big difference to your life, and it affects how you kind of really look at what you want to achieve in your career. And this kind of drive to really do something for pharmacy has always been there for me. And so I went off and did various different things. I set up my own turmeric supplement, and I went and got trained in functional medicine and health coaching. But this kind of pull, you know, what Sapana was saying about kind of this pull coming back to, like, you know, really wanting to do something for the profession kept driving me. And so I ended up really wanting to support my colleagues. And that's how I've ended up becoming a career coach for pharmacy professionals, because I really do love supporting my colleagues to kind of achieve what they want to achieve. And it's really interesting because, you know, things that people say to you, they really stick with you. And I remember when I was doing my pre-reg and I was working with a pharmacist, and she said to me, "I can actually see you as a chief pharmacist in a hospital." And I'm just like, yeah, leadership to me at the time was like, you know, I'm a pre-reg, you know, I'm not even qualified as a pharmacist yet, you know, but you don't see what others see in you. And I guess, you know, I've always felt like I wasn't really a leader, because, and that's a lot to do with your own mindset. I think you just, you know, I'm sure we'll come on to that, but you know, it's a lot to do with how you view yourself and whether you see yourself as a leader. But it was really interesting how she kind of saw me as that. And now, you know, I run the BAME Female Pharmacy Leaders Network, which basically I came about very kind of by accident in many ways. You know, I put a post up on my LinkedIn profile a while back, and I said, you know, I think we've always noticed, if you're a person of South Asian background, you will always have noticed that, you know, leadership may not necessarily represent you. And so these are conversations that you may have had with colleagues, you know, behind closed doors in a way, kind of talking about the fact that, you know, there aren't many leaders that look like us. And so I posted something on LinkedIn about that, and that got quite a lot of attention. And Reena Barai, who's obviously, you know, PSNC and NPA board member, reached out to me and said, you know, I'd really love to do something for International Women's Day and celebrate, you know, the South Asian women and women BAME of BAME background in pharmacy. And what do you think about that? And so, you know, that one thing led on to another, and we ended up basically creating an informal network. And we just run meetups for it every month now, and it's where we discuss topics like this, I suppose. So yeah, that's me.
Brilliant, thank you. I really like the for the profession rather than in the profession, because I think that really is quite powerful. Sachin, how about yourself?
Hi, thanks for inviting me today as an ally. It's a privilege for me to really be involved in the conversation today and to actually hear from the other panel members. So I've been with Boots for over 20 years now in lots of roles. So like Sapana, summer placements, pharmacist roles, and then moved into store and field management roles. And for the last 10 years, I've been working in the support office as a senior commercial manager. For me, I've always been ambitious, but I actually only ever saw a handful of people that look like me, working within the profession in sort of higher level positions, and that didn't really stop me from pursuing my dreams. But has it stopped others? And with even fewer South Asian female leaders out there, you know, I actually wonder what talent has the profession actually missed out on.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point, Sachin. And actually, throughout your life and your career, have you had female role models that you've South Asian female role models that have inspired you?
Definitely. I mean, the number one role model for me is it's a bit of a weird thing, but it's my mum. You know, she arrived in England 2 days after her 18th birthday. She just got married, no family here, not able to speak the language, but that didn't stop her from doing everything that she wanted to do in life. You know, she made sure that my brother and I, along with the extended family, were able to flourish, and that selflessness is one of her endearing qualities seen by everyone. And in the profession itself, I've been really lucky to have strong female role models as well at every stage of my career, starting off with my pre-reg tutor, a teacher practitioner, and then, you know, it's been amazing to work with actual colleagues like Sapana, who are inspiring the next generation of South Asian female leaders in our profession.
No, but yeah, it's true. And actually, I think we can all resonate with our parents coming over. And I think when you're young, you don't always give them that appreciation of how much they've had to do. But when you're older, you really, you know, recognize the change and just moving to a different country and what that brings, and different language, and how strong they would have been to be able to do that. So my next question was going to be like reflecting on the successes of your career. So Komal, how, you know, what would you say has been a success in your career? You've done so much.
Successes, you know, it's really interesting, because when you look back at what you've done, sometimes the things that you think are successful, others view as, you know, they see things that you don't see, basically, you know. And I think for me, definitely getting the role at PSNC was a really big deal for me, mainly because I actually was the first female Asian pharmacist to have a role that was at senior level in PSNC. And PSNC is, you know, for the role it does, it's actually a pretty small organization. And so it's only when you kind of walk through the doors of PSNC do you realize just actually how small the team is. And I think getting that role and walking into that role, I really felt like, you know, I've been given an opportunity, basically, you know, to do something for the profession that, you know, most of my colleagues, you know, have not been fortunate enough to have. And yeah, I think that for me has been definitely one of the, you know, the key successes for sure.
Sapana, how about yourself?
Yeah, I think for me, it's the fact that I'm really an expert now at what I do, and it allows me not only to support Boots, but support the profession, the pharmacy profession and the pharmacy industry more, particularly recently with the challenges that the industry has faced with COVID and changes that are imminent. So new legislation, such as the hub and spoke legislation that's about to come in. And I really enjoy understanding the nitty-gritty of those types of issues. And being dual qualified as a pharmacist and a solicitor, it does give me quite a unique perspective on the work that I do. Sometimes I forget that background and those years that I worked as a pharmacist just means that it's all comes second nature to me. I understand the issues and the pressures that the pharmacists are facing, and I understand the impact that those are going to have in a way that another lawyer, while perfectly competent, won't understand it in quite the same way. And also, it's that continual growth and development, which I think has also been a marker of my career. I've just completed an executive MBA, and in addition to gaining the knowledge and the skills that type of course gives you, it's also given me a real opportunity to grow as a leader. And actually, to the point that Komal was making, leadership is not just about a person's title. It's really helped me understand my own values, my drivers, the impact I can have, my purpose. It's helped me become much more people-focused rather than task-focused. And it's also realising that shift from perhaps what I might have done historically, which was doing things right, into a much more leadership position, which is about doing the right thing.
Yeah, no, I think it's really nice to know that actually, you know, there's so many different things you can do with pharmacy, and to hear that both of you have made it into something that is right, works for you, and that you get to live your values and principles. And pharmacy offers that flexibility. It's exactly the role that I've done, the head of professional belonging. It brings in the element that I enjoy and able to help the profession with it. So, and I don't think we always merit pharmacy in that way. And it's good for other people to hear that they could do the same thing as well. And in terms of like barriers or challenges that you faced in your career, have there been certain stereotypes or expectations that you've had to overcome, or be it that both professionally or culturally that you've had to think about? Sapana?
Definitely. I think culturally, there was certainly an expectation that I would follow a science-based career. And I think my legal skills were actually natural, but my interest in science was much more about nurture, particularly because my father was a GP. And that cultural background, as well as pushing me into a science-based degree, it also instilled a really strong work ethic in me. And Indians having a strong work ethic is probably a stereotype. And just recently, someone senior in the pharmacy industry commented about how all Indians work hard. And instinctively, a comment like that doesn't seem pernicious because it's complimentary. But actually, it's those type of comments that still promote antiquated beliefs about different groups. And so they still need to be addressed in the right way and in a respectful way if we do hear comments like that. So I think the problem in terms of stereotyping, the problems faced by women and also by Asians, it's not the content of the stereotyping. I think actually it can be the act of the stereotyping itself. And that, I'm sure, goes for any minority group, actually.
It's true. Komal?
Yeah, I agree with what Sapana's just said. You know, I mean, you know, I have to say, I think sometimes for me, I feel like a lot of it is to do with my own fear, I guess. You know, there's this fear within me sometimes, or there has been over the years, where you kind of almost don't see yourself as being as good as your colleagues. Sometimes I remember thinking to myself in meetings, the contribution that I've got to make is very different to everyone else's contribution. And if you're not in an environment where that's nurtured, then you can sometimes feel like you're an outsider, and you can sometimes feel like you don't want to say what you believe is right to say in that moment. And I can definitely think of several occasions when that's kind of played out for me. But there's also, interesting, what you were saying about the stereotypes as well, is that those stereotypes do ultimately drive our behavior as well, because, people might see us as, you often get that I've had people say to me, oh, you're Gujarati, you must be a good businessman, but good business person sort of thing. And it's like, I may have come from that background, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm a good business person. Do you know what I mean? But if you say something enough to yourself, you believe it. And that can have positive or negative impacts, right? So yeah, I think the fear of, of not speaking out has sometimes kind of got the better of me at times when I look back at my career.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting, because it's also about not letting the side down as well. Sachin, is that these experiences that you've witnessed or resonate with?
Yes, similar types of experiences to Komal and Sapana, really. It's the expectation of community and family that live with you. I definitely wouldn't have been a pharmacist if it wasn't for my mum. It was her dream for her son to go into a medical profession and the other one to be an accountant, and my brother is an accountant. But that's not stopped me from enjoying and embracing the profession. And yes, it's the stereotypical thing that you either go into medicine or go into business or something like that. But I'm doing something slightly different within pharmacy, and I'm doing something that I love doing and have been doing for the last 10 years. So for me, it's about what you make of the decisions that ultimately you may not have had a hand in to begin with. Equally, it's not stopped any of us achieving what we wanted to do. It's great hearing what Sapana and Komal both said, and they're in roles now that they love doing and enjoying it and embracing it and sharing that with people. So it's what you make of life at the end of the day.
Yeah, no, it's true. I think we've all kind of been put into pharmacy, haven't we? Through different, our parents have pressured us in different ways to do it. My dad's dream was for me to open a chemist, but that never happened.
Same.
Your time.
Yeah. So in terms of your thinking about your cultural backgrounds, do you think that they've influenced the roles that you've undertaken? I mean, other than obviously being in pharmacy, and do you think that your cultural background has actually influenced the way you've approached your roles or your leadership styles when you're undertaking them? So Komal, I'll start with you with this question.
I think so, although I would say that with this question, sometimes you're not aware of how your cultural background is actually, connecting you to people. I think for me, and I think we can probably all relate to this, our parents worked really hard when they came from wherever they came from. My dad came from Kenya, so it was they worked really, really hard. And the thing that was always instilled in me was that everyone is important, no matter what level you are at, whoever you are, that's important. And I've always tried to kind of keep that, within me whenever I've taken on roles, and really kind of make sure that everyone gets the opportunity to speak and everyone gets the opportunity to say what they want to say. I think that for me has been one of the key things. But I suppose it's difficult to say when you've got this cultural background and that is who you are. And so, but I think definitely inclusivity has been something that I've just kind of has been part of my profession and the way in which I've, been in my careers. Yeah.
Sachin, how about yourself?
I think it does have, cultural background does definitely influenced my role or going into the profession itself, but it's not stopped me from going into other things that I want to do and enjoy doing. So for me, it's helped. You learn from the people around you, and like Komal said, it's the hard work from our parents who showed us that and gave us that, that we now put into our own careers itself. But that, for me, it's about then showing that to everybody else that you work with and alongside. I think that's really, really important for me, is people understand you as a person and why you're here and why you make a difference to everything. And in terms of things like leadership styles, I think I feel personally that I get looked at in a way that is he there because of merit, or is he there to make up the numbers of South Asian people? That's how I personally feel. And I will only go into things if I feel that I've got there on merit. Even though if it could be a fantastic position, I'm not going to go there just because they need a brown face to do something. And I'm glad I work for an organisation which looks at merit and looks at talent and has helped push that forward. And being part of the BAME BRG at Boots, or the Business Resource Group at Boots, that's really helping to make loads of inroads within the business, and hopefully we can share those things, outside of work as well. I know I do that with football and other things that I'm involved with. So I think it's really, really important that, yes, cultural backgrounds have influenced a role, but we learn from other people as well. We take that on board, and that diversity definitely helps everybody in the end.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Sapana?
Yeah, I think some of the points that Sachin made, I would definitely agree with. In terms of how personally, and I would say the culture has impacted on my role, some of the work I've done over the last couple of years is much more personal reflection and analysis about what shape me, what are my values, how do they drive behaviours, and understanding how they've come about. And it's interesting, Komal talking about inclusivity. So for me, similar sorts of issues, it's integrity, it's trust, it's fairness, and understanding that those things are important to you, and the reason that they're important to you helps you implement them in the right way, both and the people around you.
No. Yeah, thank you. And I suppose just to kind of end on, because I'm conscious of time and we could talk about this all day, but bringing it back to, I suppose, that representation of senior South Asian women in leadership, how do we make sure that we are getting that representation across the profession, and then that importance of allyship, and why, actually, the question is, why is it important that we have South Asian leadership representation across the patch? So Sapana, I'll start with you on this one.
Yeah, we've touched on some of this already, actually. I think one thing that women, myself included, can do better is emulate men. And by that, I don't mean be more masculine, because there are certainly tons of leadership qualities where women are far more talented. What I mean is finding ways to deal with some of that self-doubt, some of that imposter syndrome, and actually building that confidence, which for me, I have to confess, has come with age and experience. I certainly wasn't like this in my 20s. And similar to what Sachin said, I'm not entirely sure I really believe in quotas, because I'm absolutely a firm believer in meritocracy instead. But when it comes to a time when a leadership group doesn't represent society, doesn't represent their customers, doesn't represent their members, then the organisation needs to be bolder in terms of what actions it's going to take to create long-lasting, inclusive culture and promote an inclusive behaviour. And that can be done in so many different ways, whether that's from recruitment with blind CVs and diverse interview panels, when you're in a business, looking at business resource groups that Sachin was talking about, or mentoring schemes. What's the leadership doing? Have they got data-driven insights? Are they holding leaders to account? Are they being transparent? How are they really fostering belonging? And actually, I love your job title, having Head of Professional Belonging, hopefully indicates that that's something that the RPS is taking seriously too.
Yeah, no, brilliant. Thank you. They're really good points. Sachin?
Well, me being an ally, it's really, really important that, we are there to support everyone. And I know that this sounds really, really simple, but for me, it's treating everyone equally. That's like ensuring women have the same opportunities as their male colleagues, and that the right person is chosen for the job based on merit. And I know I mentioned merit earlier, but other things like ensuring women are paid at least the same as their male counterparts for the same jobs that they do, and ensuring that we as men create an environment where everyone feels like they belong. But most importantly for me, it's not accepting, as a man, not accepting or tolerating any discrimination which is presented towards women. Because being a true ally means being willing to act with and for others in pursuit of ending oppression and creating equality. Now, I want my daughter growing up to see women that look like her in those high-level positions, whatever the field or industry that she's going to aspire to follow.
Yeah, that's really powerful. And I'm glad that you said that about the, maintain that everyone has a role. If you witness something that isn't where, there isn't equal behavior, then it should be called out, and actually men have the power to do that as well. So that's really powerful. Komal?
Yeah, I mean, this is the whole reason why we've got the BAME Female Pharmacy Network, really. We created it from the three of us have got a community pharmacy background, but we actually created it from the perspective of we want to support other women who have, aspirations to be leaders in the profession. And, we want the whole premise of the network is to find, develop and support those women. And, it's been really quite amazing to see how we're a completely informal network, but in a small space of time, just by women coming together from different backgrounds within pharmacy, from all different sectors, talking about the challenges that we may be experiencing and pulling each other up, supporting each other up. We've already seen so many women in the network putting themselves forward as nominees for the RPS board, putting themselves forward for, to be on expert advisory committee, on various expert advisory committees at the RPS, putting themselves forward and actually just putting their voices out there about things that they feel passionately about. And that, to me, is one of the best ways in which we can support one another to really achieve what we want to achieve. And not everybody has ambitions to be a CEO or to be a director or to be, at the senior most levels within the profession. But what I think has been really beneficial of the network is the fact that whatever that ambition is for you, that there's a group and there's a community who are there to support you and, who are there to kind of, pull you up and, give you that courage to put yourself forward, really. And that's kind of my way of giving back, really, in whatever small way that is, whether it supports somebody to, to put themselves forward for a role, push past their fear and do it, that to me is an achievement. So yeah, I think a lot of it is to do with supporting others to achieve what they want to achieve.
Yeah, no, I think it's fantastic. And actually, just knowing that group is there, especially as a South Asian woman, it's nice to know I've got somewhere to go. So I was just before this call, I was sharing an experience that I had, but at least I know that I've got a network that I can go, oh my God, this has happened, or, has anyone else experienced this? At least then you've got somewhere to share that in a safe space. And also for other people to hear that, this happens and what are we doing about it? So I have to say that is, and then also just even having these conversations to say it's not okay, or we should be highlighting it more, getting people to think about it. So I just want to say a big thank you to everybody for your contributions, and it's been such an interesting topic, and like I said, I could talk about this for hours, so but I'm sure everyone else has got better things to do. So I just want to say a big final thank you for your contributions, and hopefully this is just the start of this conversation, and we'll keep it going, as much as it's only a month for South Asian Heritage Month, but we need to keep this conversation going. So just want to say thank you for anyone listening today, and we are holding another lunchtime session next week where we'll be considering intersectionality in pharmacy, and it'll be a really interesting panel. We've got members from the LGBTQ+ community, members who've got a disability or experience with disability, and mental health and wellbeing, and just considering how a South Asian community we kind of maybe need to do more, if we're being really honest, about having those open conversations. So I think that'll be a really interesting panel. Also, the Pharmacy Technicians of Colour are hosting a Twitter chat on the 3rd of August at 7 p.m. So watch out for that. And we've got our event on the 12th of August, which is a quiz night. We're hoping to have music round and everything. So hopefully it'll be interesting, but please do register for that. So just want to say another big final thank you to everybody. Yeah, we'll end that here. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.